either. Okay. Lee, make us into some
Good
commentators or whatever
morning.
it's called.
The power of decision is my own. Lesson 152 with echoes.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you.
And hopefully now I got rid of the echo.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning, Bob.
Sean, I've got some stuff that I need to talk to you about.
Okay.
And we'll probably just do it as a side channel. It was Susie's suggestion.
Okay. Cool.
And yeah, we'll do it on the side and talk to you later also a little bit. Welcome in. Come in. Hello, Monica. Welcome back. Glad to see you here. Lee, could you also make me a moderator, please?
Sure, Pop.
And happy birthday to Grace. Grace, it's Lee's daughter. She's turning 12 today. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Adriana.
Good morning.
Good morning, Adriana. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Lena and Linda.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, ladies. Carolyn.
Thank you.
Oh, as a little, if you wanted to help get the message out on Course in Miracles and especially this workbook, I'd appreciate it if you go online and post a book review on Amazon for Understanding A Course in Miracles workbook lessons. That's what we've been reading from throughout the year. And that would be helpful in getting the message out. I this last year retitled the book, and when I did that, because it was offline for a while, I lost my number one page rankings with Amazon, and that's important in regards to having other people become aware of it, because I don't pay for any advertisements. That's how most people get on the number one ranking. It's just on page one is by paying for their ads, but I don't do that. So I just have to rely on the Holy Spirit. And actually, book reviews are instrumental in helping me regain that ranking. So I would appreciate it if you guys would go in and give a hopefully 5-star rating on the book. You don't have to actually have bought the book from Amazon. You should be aware of it, obviously, by listening to these classes. You're aware of it. And you do need an Amazon account that's spent at least $50. It doesn't have to be your own account. It could be a friend or family. But I would appreciate it if you could go online and post a review, because that'll help me recover my number one ranking or page rankings on that with Amazon. So thank you for that consideration. And that's something that I think would help support the message. Thank you.
I agree, Tom. It's a good call, and I have a link to it. So up at the top of the screen where it says A Course in Miracles.live, there's a link directly into the Amazon page. If you click on that link, it's easy to get there, just one click away, and you can leave a review. I'm putting a review in myself. It says that we read it every day here. So I think it's be a helpful thing if you got some time. And we'll make it easy, and I'll probably mention it a couple more times. But today, I'm going to get into reading this book, Understanding A Course in Miracles Workbook Lessons. And I'm on lesson 152. And if you're reading along, we're on page 315. The power of decision is my own. No one can suffer loss unless it be his own decision to suffer loss. No one suffers pain except his choice elects this state of pain for himself. No one can grieve or fear. No one can grieve, nor fear, nor think him sick, unless these are the outcomes that he wants. And no one dies without his own consent to die. Nothing occurs that represents your wish, and nothing is omitted that you choose. Here, in your own wishes and decisions, is your world, complete in all details. Here, in your own wishes and decisions, is your world's whole reality for you. And it is only here, in your own wishes and decisions, salvation is. You may believe that this position, that in your own wishes and decisions is your world's whole reality, is extreme and too inclusive to be true. Yet, can truth have exceptions? If you have the gift of everything, can loss be real? Can pain be part of pleasure, or grief part of joy? Can fear and sickness enter a mind where love and perfect holiness abide? Truth must be all inclusive, if truth is to be true at all. Accept no no exceptions to truth. For to do so is to contradict the truth entirely. Salvation is the recognition that the truth is true and nothing else is true. The statement that truth is true and nothing else is true you have heard before. But you may not yet accept both parts of that statement. Truth is true, and nothing else is true. Without the first part, that the truth is true, the second part, that nothing else is true, has no meaning. But without the second part, that nothing else is true, the first part about truth is no longer true. Truth cannot have an opposite. Truth cannot have an opposite cannot be too often said and thought about. For if what is not true is true, as well as what is true, then part of the truth is false. And if truth can have an opposite and the false can be true, then truth has lost its meaning. Nothing but the truth is true. And what is false is false. The idea that truth can have no opposites is the simplest of distinctions. Yet it's the most obscure. Why would that be? It's most obscure because it doesn't exist here in our reality, so it's hard to imagine. Sorry, that was my own interjection there. The idea that truth can have no opposite is the simplest of distinctions, yet the most obscure. But not because the idea that truth can have no opposites is a difficult distinction to perceive. The idea that truth can have no opposites is concealed behind a vast array of choices that do not appear to be entirely your own. And thus, the truth appears to have some aspects that belie consistency, but do not seem to be but contradictions introduced by your own egoic mind. As God created you, you must remain unchangeable, with transitory states, by definition, false. And these false transitory states include all shifts in feeling, alterations in conditions of the body and the mind, in all awareness and in all response. This is the all-inclusiveness definition of truth, which sets the truth apart from falsehood, and the false kept separate from the truth, as what truth is. Is it not strange that you believe to think you made the world? Nope, let me say that again. Is it not strange that you believe to think you made the world you see is arrogance? God made not the world you see. Of this, that God did not create the world you see, you can be sure. What can God know of the ephemeral, the sinful, the guilty, the afraid, the suffering, and the lonely, and the mind that lives within a body that must die? You but accuse God of insanity to think God made a world where such things like sin, guilt, separation, and fear seem to have reality. God is not mad. Yet only madness makes a world like this, that you perceive to be your provisional reality. To think that God made chaos contradicts God's own will, invented opposites to truth, and suffers death to triumph over life. All of this is arrogance. Humility would see at once these things like suffering, pain, and death are not of God. And can you see what God created not? To think that you can see what God did not create is merely to believe that you can perceive what God has not willed to be. And what could be more arrogant than to believe you can perceive what God willed not to be? Let us today be truly humble and accept what we have made as what it is, which is a false world that arose from our own false perception and decisions. The power of decision is our own. Decide but to accept your rightful place as co-creator of the universe. And all you think your ego's little s self decisions that were made will disappear. What rises to awareness then will be all that there ever was, eternally as it is now. And the real world of your big S self will take the place of egoic self-deceptions made but to usurp the altar to the Father and the Son. Today, we practice true humility, abandoning the false pretense by which the ego seeks to prove truth arrogant. Only the ego can be arrogant. Truth is humble in acknowledging truth's mightiness. Truth's humility is all-encompassing. Truth is God's perfect gift to God's beloved Son. We lay aside the ego's arrogance, which says that we are sinners, guilty afraid, ashamed of what we are, and lift our hearts in true humility instead to God, who has created us immaculate, like to God Himself, in power and in love. The power of decision is our own, and we accept of God that which we are, our higher self, and humbly recognize the Son of God. To recognize God's Son implies as well that all egoic self-concepts of sin, limitation, separation, and fear have been laid aside and recognized as false. The arrogance of your ego's self-concept, of your little s self, has been perceived, and in humility, the radiance of God's Son, His big S self's gentleness, His perfect sinlessness, His Father's love, His right to heaven, and His release from hell are joyously accepted as our own.
Please turn the music down.
Okay. Sure thing. There we go. Now do we join in glad acknowledgement that lies are false and only truth is true. We think of truth alone as we arise, and spend 5 minutes practicing truth's ways, encouraging our frightened egoic minds with this: the power of decision is my own. This day I will accept myself as what my Father's will created me to be, my capital H, higher capital S self, my big S self. Then we will wait in silence, giving up all egoic self-deceptions as we humbly ask our higher self that He reveal Himself to us. And the Holy Spirit, who never left, will come again to our awareness, grateful to restore the Son's home to God, as the Son's home was meant to be. In patience, wait for the Holy Spirit throughout the day, and hourly invite the Holy Spirit with the words which the day began, that the power of decision is my own, concluding it with the same invitation to your big S self, your higher self. God's voice will answer, for the Holy Spirit speaks for you and for your Father. The Holy Spirit will substitute the peace of God for all of your frantic egoic thoughts, the truth of God for your ego's self-deceptions of sin, limitation, separation, and fear, and God's Son for your illusions of your ego's little s self. And that's the end of the lesson. And we will go into the notes in just a Okay, so I see Rainbow's questions in the background. Sorry for the confusion. So I am reading out of a book that Tom wrote. Tom took the blue book that we're all familiar with and added some notes to it to make it a little bit easier to understand. And we read a lot of these at the beginning, but it's been a couple of days, and Tom alluded to it. So the book that I'm reading, if you could see my screen, you'd see that some of the words on the screen are in bold. The words that are in bold on my screen right this moment are words like the Holy Spirit. Because in the book, in sentence 3, paragraph 12, sentence 3, in the book it says, he will substitute the peace of God for all your frantic thoughts. But Tom wrote, the Holy Spirit will substitute the peace of God for all your frantic, egoic thoughts. Tom inserted the word egoic to help us realize that it's the egoic thoughts, not our higher thoughts of our higher self, and that the he at the beginning was the Holy Spirit. And by reading those in Clubhouse, when you're listening to it and you're not reading the book itself, it gets confusing for the pronouns and the pronouns and the adverbs and the things that reference other ideas aren't really clear. So I read Tom's book because it has that extra clarity, and his book has notes for each area. In the main text, there was a note for each paragraph. Here, in the lessons, we have notes for each of the lessons. So I read the lesson out of Tom's book, and if you're reading along with the blue book, you'll see it's almost identical, just with those words substituted back in. So I hope that's a little bit clearer as to what we're actually reading here. It's still A Course in Miracles. It's just annotated in the same kind of way that we have commentaries on the Bible and we have annotations on the Bible to help make it clearer.
Yeah,
And if
let
you
me
have...
just say,
Sure, go
Lee,
ahead.
that it is identical. And the reason that you read Big S Self is because in the book, they make a distinguishing characteristic throughout the book. Whenever they're talking about your egoic self, they write self with a small s. Whenever they make reference to the higher self or your true reality, they capitalize the S. So, there's no problem with you just putting higher self because that's what it is. But
Yep.
because I
But they
always
weren't even
was
consistent
told to
with it,
be
right?
consistent, yeah, with the book, there's nothing out of this book that's anything different. It's word for word, except whenever you, like you say, you get to your keys, the stuff in bold is trying to explain that, or sometimes it'll reference back to the lesson says. Well, it'll say what the lesson is. So it's word for word from the blue book, and whenever you always say big S self. That's because that's how they said it in the book. So that's what I was directed to do.
Yep.
We understand that that means the higher self. So if you always want to substitute higher
Sorry.
self because of what it sounds like, that's no problem whatsoever. The important thing is to get the differentiation so we don't have that level confusion or not sure what the references are. It just reinforces the actual message that it's trying to tell us. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, Rainbow. I know it can get confusing sometimes. There are multiple versions of this book out there. We have read from the main blue text that's supported by the Foundation for Inner Peace, and we've also read and referenced the purple book, which is put out by a group called the Circle of Atonement, which again is another a different way of going back and looking at the original text. So thanks for helping me remember to clarify that once in a while. And if you have deeper questions, of course, you can talk to Tom. Tom had the inspiration to do it. So I really appreciate the effort. It's certainly made it clearer for me when I was reading through it. And so that's why I chose to read it here. All right. And with all of that explained away, the notes to lesson 152. The power of decision is my own was the name of the lesson. This pivotal lesson in the course begins because it provides 4 definitions, which once again are quite surprising and unusual, yet their implications are profound. These 4 definitions hold the key to controlling and ultimately overcoming all fears in your life. This lesson defines truth, salvation, decision, and thinking. All 4 words are used in our everyday language, and we came to understand what these words mean. Yet because of their unusual definition used in this course, these 4 words can lead to a great deal of misunderstanding and confusion. Let's tackle all 4 of these key words and their meanings as defined in this lesson. Truth is defined as what truth is true. Truth is defining as what is truth. Truth is true, and nothing else is true. On the surface, that seems like strange and yet obvious definition for truth. Everyone is well aware what truth is, and that truth is true. Yet, the second half of this definition states that nothing else is true, and that we fail to recognize, and whose implications fail to realize. Thank you. Let me read that sentence again. Yet it's the second half of this definition that states nothing else is true, and that we fail to realize, and whose implications we choose to ignore. The second half of the statement that nothing else is true states that truth can have no opposite. What is false cannot be true. It is our belief that what is false can be true that is the source of all of our problems. That's a key sentence. It is our belief that what is false can be true that is the source of all of our problems. Why? Because of this error in misunderstanding what truth means, we confuse a make-believe world of our own mind's imagination with the reality of what God created as God created it. If what is not true is true as well as what is actually true, then part of the truth is false. If an original statement is false, and a second statement acknowledges that this first statement is not true, we assume the second statement is true. Yet, ACIM makes an important distinction that this is not the case. When I use the words not true, I'm confusing the issue of the non-reality of the false by using imprecise language. The correct language would be to say that the first statement is false, which is the recognition that the false has no reality. We fall into the language trap that assumes the words not true are equivalent to the word false. This gives rise to the idea that the false could be true and the truth can sometimes be false. The false has no reality. What did we lose?
Your dad.
He did?
Yeah.
All right, no problem. The false has no reality. Nope, language trap. This gives rise to the idea that the false can be true and the true can sometimes be false. The false has no reality. How can you define what is nothing? When you define something that does not exist, you give an illusion the appearance of being real. Because of confusing the false with reality, your mind can quickly jump to the false conclusion that what appears to be real must have the ability to change what does really exist. This belief that the false can change the truth is the source of all of our fears. Our mind has made fear real, and now our mind has entrapped itself into a fear-based thought system. Our mind has forgotten that the false is but an illusion that only exists within our mind's imagination. Because our mind's beliefs gave reality to the false, we are the creator of the false, and therefore our mind has the power to end the illusion by changing its beliefs that what is false can be real. Although the law of attraction is beyond the scope of this class, this failure to understand the idea that the truth is true and nothing else is true is why so many people do not believe that the law of attraction really works. The law of attraction says that what you place your attention on, you attract. This law claims the universe is like a genie that promptly fulfills all of your wishes. This notion that you always get what you want obviously does not appear to be correct on the surface because people claim they do not wish to be sick or have poor relationships, suffer, or be in poverty. The disbelievers of the law of attraction claim that if all their experiences were based on their own wishes, and they did not want to be sick, but suffered a major illness, the law of attraction must be false. And so they dismiss the law of attraction as bogus, and the masses continue to believe that they're victims of outside forces that are beyond their control. The reason for the apparent failure of the law of attraction is their failure to realize that nothing else is true. They mistake the idea that placing their attention on not being sick is the same as placing their attention on being healthy. Being healthy and not being sick are not the same, and they involve different vibrational frequencies. Here's an analogy to help explain this problem. First, recall that time is the belief that opposites exist. Time is the game board for the belief that both love and fear are equally real. With that caveat, let's get back to the analogy. There is a bar magnet for health, and there's a bar magnet for sickness. These are two separate magnets. When you place your attention on not being sick, you have placed your attention on the bar magnet of sickness. Your mind has tuned your vibrational tuning fork to sickness. So that is what you attract. If you had understood that nothing else is true, you would have realized that you needed to place your attention on health if you're to experience being healthy. In a world of opposites, good health and not being sick are not the same thing. If nothing else is true, the not true cannot have any reality. The belief in the existence of the not true, ACIM explains, can only appear real within a delusional mind that believes that the truth could have an opposite that is just as real as what is true. This is impossible. The false can only appear to exist in the delusional mind that believes the truth has an opposite. The not true is a pretend world that can only be experienced within your own mind's imagination, which becomes your own private world of individuated perception or provisional reality. The idea that truth has an opposite can be stated as the belief that the false can be true and that the true could be false. Truth just is, and nothing else is real. Salvation is the recognition that truth is true and nothing else is true. This gets us to the next strange definition that is provided in this lesson. Salvation is the recognition that truth is true and nothing else is true. This definition is simple, yet surprising. Normally, we would associate salvation with some type of blissful state or removal of the consequences of our sins and our return to heaven. Instead, salvation is simply defined as our recognition of the truth, which ultimately would lead us to the realization that we remain as God created us, perfect, whole, and complete. With salvation, we finally understand that the false is not real, and our egoic mind cannot change what God created. Our provisional reality that we experience in the world of perception is a mere illusion that has no ability to change God's will or God's illusions. Nope, God's will or God's creations. We always will remain as God created us, perfect, whole, and complete, and part of the one self. The recognition that the truth is true and nothing else is true means that this world that we perceive as our provisional reality is not real and has not been created by God. The ego's dream world of perception has no ability to change the truth that only what God created is real, changeless, and eternal. The third definition has to deal with decision. Decision is the belief that there is something that is not true, and therefore that we can experience the false. It's the belief that truth has an opposite, and that the opposite of truth is as real as truth itself. The belief that the false exists is only an illusion because truth has no opposites. In time, there is only one decision that we need to make, and that's the recognition that the truth is true and nothing else is true, which has been defined as salvation. This means salvation is one decision away. Salvation is simply the acceptance of the truth or the atonement for yourself. The power of decision is your own, because the power of decision is your belief that the false can exist and has the ability to change the truth of what God created as God created it. The power of decision only appears to exist within the delusional mind that believes the false is real. The power of decision is not an attribute of God. God is truth, and truth just is. Nothing opposes truth, for nothing else is real. In time, it appears we have a decision to make because we believe that the false is real. In reality, a decision for the false is no decision, because to choose the false is a decision to choose nothingness. Since nothingness cannot change what is real, a decision for nothingness has no effect, and therefore is ultimately no decision. There's only one choice available, which is truth, because truth has no opposites. The fourth term that is defined is thinking. To think is to claim that you don't know. Thinking comes from the belief that there is both truth and truth's opposite. The ego is arrogant and believes it can think because it claims it does not know the truth of who you really are. The power of decision entails thinking, which is the illusion of not knowing. The power of decision is your claim that you could not know what you really are, and that you could have an existence other than as God created you. So, what are the implications of these four terms and their strange definitions? Salvation is the recognition that truth is true and nothing else is true. Truth has no opposites. Everything you chose to perceive is because you want a certain outcome. There are no exceptions. It is your choice that's reflected in your provisional reality. Your provisional reality is the illusion that you could be something other than what God created. Arrogance is to claim that God created your provisional reality, which implies that God would have allowed evil to exist in your world. Evil contradicts God's will and therefore cannot be real. God did not create your world of perception. You did. Your ego's world can only be birthed by a delusional mind that believes sin, guilt, and fear to be real. Truth has no opposites. The ego tries to confuse us by claiming that there are some choices over which we have no control. The ego claims there are exceptions to the rule that your provisional reality reflects your own thinking. To think you see evil is to contradict God's changeless will, which is the height of arrogance. True humility rests on the fact that you must always remain as God created you. Your ego can deny this truth, but its denial cannot change this truth. Egoic arrogance says sin, guilt, and fear are real. Salvation is the recognition of the truth that you have the freedom to be or imagine anything that you want, but that your imagination cannot change the truth or make the false real. And that's the end of the notes. The question is, here's a statement I would like you to consider. In this world, we all commit suicide, but some disguise it better than others. Do you believe this is true? Why or why not? And let's take a minute now for our meditation. We're going to deep seat this learning down deep. Set a reminder for yourself today to come back to this thought. The thought of today, one more time, is the power of decision is my own. All right, Tom, I'm ready when you are. Thank you.
Yeah. This lesson is a little, I'm going to say technical, but it's instrumental in pointing out the problem that we have. And whenever we talk and use words, we'll find that in our language itself, because it's based on duality, the idea that there's you and something other than yourself, uh, the language itself tends to have a number of embedded assumptions that make the false true, otherwise make this illusion appear to be real. So it's important to realize that uh, this time-space continuum, this world of perception, and perception is the four dimensions of up, down, depth, time, and your beliefs. And it's your beliefs that create the world of perception. And if we have wrong beliefs, then we're coming from that's where the error begins with our wrong beliefs, and that unless we modify or realize that that's where the problem lies and corrects the source of the problem, which is our misunderstanding of what we are, or that we could be uh, guilty of sin, and with sin comes the idea of guilt and fear, and becoming an earner. Those are the bedrock of the fear-based thought system. So we have to go back and correct those original misperceptions of what we are. And when we do that, we realize that this uh, time-space continuum, this world of perception, can only be a kind of like a dream, a movie that has no reality to change the truth of what we are, which is as God created us. So, this idea in the Course in Miracles says that there was nothing wrong with wanting to experience the idea of differentiation or opposites, the idea of having opposite like black and white gives you a better understanding of what uh, each is, because there's some differentiation. So there was no problem with us wanting to experience the illusion of separate autonomous beings so that we could demonstrate the various aspects of love. The problem was our decision not to laugh, which was the decision actually to make the dream, the illusion appear real, and forget that it was a game board, and to actually think that somehow that illusion, that silver screen, that dream could somehow make what we are uh, something other than what we are, that could change us. And so we have to realize that that's a decision that was born out of our uh, misunderstanding of what the truth is, that we thought that an illusion had the ability to change what we really are. When we believe that an illusion has the ability to change reality, that's trying to make the something that is nothing. That's just our in our minds, our imagination, and to make that uh, supersede God's will. And the Course in Miracles is very simple because it just says what God created is perfect, whole, and complete, changeless, and anything that we see that might be out of alignment with that arises from our misunderstanding of what we are. So, with that in mind, the lesson says the power of decision is my own. And it's interesting in reference to the decision. It basically says that when you decide for that the false, you make a choice and it's between true and false. You decide for the false because that's not really a viable choice because it has no impact. It's like making no decision. And the Course says that rather than get involved with some blame, shame, and guilt for that decision, just realize that it was no decision, had no ability to change you, and therefore uh, it cannot be a source of any guilt, blame, or shame because nothing really happened. It was like just forgetting to make a decision. And that's why the Course says, choose again, choose again, choose again. And ultimately, as we go through all the various possibilities of different false applications, eventually we must hit on the only decision that is viable, which is the truth. So this is very interesting and it's a deep lesson. And so what we're going to try and do as decision maker, realize that we have the choice to choose again, and that playing in the game of time and space in the world of perception is not a problem unless we misunderstand the truth and try to make the false real and believe that the false could change something or have a real effect that could change God's child that was perfect, whole, and complete into a sinner, something that has to earn some type of redemption to change what we truly are. And that is impossible. We remain as God created us, perfect, whole, and complete. And all that we need to do is correct our delusional thinking, our misunderstanding of what we truly are. So, with that in mind, let's just become aware of what we call the game token of the body and get in a comfortable position, whatever that might be. And in this case, we want to just become aware of the breath and realize that in time and space, although uh, we have the appearance of separation and we need costumes to make that appearance appear real, that's not our reality. That you are spirit, you are energy, you are light. So as you rest in the game token we call the body, just watch the pump that is the body breathing in and out, bringing in some life force and making the animation of the body appear real in our own mind so that we can uh, better play the game and kind of forget our truth of what we really are. But as we, as a decision maker, decide to pump energy into and animate that body, we also realize that this is your decision. The power of decision is your own as individuated aspects of consciousness. It is your ability to place attention, to move energy. That is the source for everything that you perceive. So breathe in that life force energy in. And what we want to do is, as we're doing this, we want to realize that the illusion of separation, that we are the game token, is where the mistake lies. What we want to do is we want to release that idea of separation. So, energy in, all thoughts of separation out. Separation is a decision that we're constantly being asked to make and make a different decision that we are not separate, that is a false reality and has no ability to change the truth. Energy in, all thoughts of separation out. Energy in, all thoughts of lack, limitation, separation out. Energy in, I make the decision to release all thoughts of guilt, sin, fear, for that is merely a decision of my own mind. It's not my reality. The love of God in, that is my reality. The love of God in, I am light. The love of God in, I am an extension of that light. The love of God in, that is my reality. And as we realize that we are light, that we are energy, let us exit the game token we call the body and just hover above it so that we can see the separation, the illusionary form, and realize that the body is not us. We are energy. We are light. And when we look around, all that we see is light. All things that are animated. All things that are created by God is light. There is no differentiation. There are no differences. We are light. We can have place our attention on various aspects of the light. We can see, like a prism, the different colors of the rainbow, but ultimately it is light. It is energy that you are. And you, as decision maker, have the ability to choose where you wish to place your attention and what you wish to animate as your provisional reality. And time and space gives us the ability to be the truth or imagine we're something that we're not. And if we imagine we're something that we're not, if we imagine we're a dog, that imagination gives us an experience, but it doesn't change the reality of what we truly are. Our spiritual DNA does not change and now become the DNA of a dog. That is just an illusion that gives us an experience so that we can better understand the truth of what we are, that we are a powerful extension of the oneness of all that is, and that it is our decision that we are here to explore. And as we hover above this world of time and space and realize that it's our decision maker that is asked to choose what they will place their attention on, what their beliefs they will appear to make real within their own mind, that is the source of this world that we perceive to be a fear-based planet with a fear-based thought system. And it is that belief within our mind that we could be other than something that God created, perfect, whole, and complete, that creates all the illusions that we could be separate, that we could be a sinner, that we could have done something wrong, that we could have lost our true reality, our true spiritual DNA, and that we could be something other than as God created us, perfect, whole, and complete. And that is the belief that what is not true somehow has the ability to change the truth, that what God created, perfect, whole, and complete, could be changed by our misunderstanding or our pretense that we could be a dog, that we could be something different. Our imagination cannot change truth. Truth just is. And as we realize that truth just is, and that playing in the game of separation is just a learning experience, a way that the individuated oneself can better know and demonstrate the various aspects of love and form, we realize that there is no blame, shame, or guilt associated with pretending. Those can be valuable learning lessons for us to better know and hone our skill in demonstrating what love would have me do in this dream, this game board that has the illusion that we could be something other than perfect, whole, and complete, that our sisters, our brothers, that this world that we imagine could be something other than as God created it, part of that oneness of all, perfect, whole, and complete. There is no illusion that can change the truth of what you really are. You remain as God created you. It is only your belief, your decision to perceive that the false, that what is an illusion could change your reality, that needs to be corrected. That is your decision that a false decision really does not change the truth. Truth just is. And whether or not you believe or do not believe the truth, truth doesn't change. God is true. What God created as He created it is what you are. Illusion, this game board of time and space, of misperception, cannot change your reality. You are perfect, whole, and complete. Salvation is one decision away. Salvation is the realization that this illusion, this game board, has no ability to change what you really are. You have not and cannot sin. You cannot be different than what God created us. And although we may look at that as being arrogant to say that we are perfect, whole, and complete, that is the reality. And to pretend or try to make the false real and somehow pretend that your denial of the truth could change what God created is the height of egoic arrogance. Humility is accepting the truth. You are God's beloved child with whom she is well pleased, perfect, whole, and complete, part of the oneness of all that is. And it's only your decision to argue for your arrogance, which is really to argue for your littleness, that keeps you trapped in the illusion of fear. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Fear is trying to make the illusion change reality. It can't be done. It's impossible. Truth just is, and you're agreeing or disagreeing with truth doesn't make the truth more true, nor can it ever make the truth false. You are God's beloved child, an extension of the oneness of all that is, given all the power that is God, for God did not create any junk. There is no separation. Two sides of one indivisible coin. You are perfect, whole, and complete. And as a thinker, realize that thinking is the idea that you don't know what you are. It's the idea that there's some possibility other than the truth. There's only one decision that can be made because there is only truth. Truth has no opposites. And in time and space, although we can delay that decision, our ultimate decision to accept the truth is guaranteed because that's the only viable option out there. Any other option, any other idea has no ability to change your reality. Salvation is one decision away. In time and space, in this world of perception, you could accept the truth that you are not the body. You are free. You remain as God created you, perfect, whole, and complete. Nothing can rob you of your own inner peace unless you, as decision maker, decide to try to make the illusion appear real. And that decision is only a decision that postpones the reawakening to the truth of what you really are. Today, as we realize this truth of what we are light, energy, part of that oneness, and we look about and all we see is light. Realize that time and space, the illusion of form, that's a costume. And although we can choose to play in this world, the purpose is not to earn salvation. For paradise could never be lost. Your reality could not be changed. It is just the idea that I want to hone my skills. I want to demonstrate what love would have me do. And today we make the decision to be the light that lights your world, to realize that time and space is but an illusion, and we're all actors strutting on a stage that has no ability to change the truth. And today, when we look about, make the decision not to mistake a game token, a costume for the Son of God, for the child of God, perfect, whole, and complete. And with that affirmation, we realize that there are no separation. There is only light. And we look at this world as a fun, learning place. And today, give ourselves permission to know the truth and to play on this game board. Have fun. It's an exciting place where you can demonstrate and learn the truth that you are only love. And as we make that decision and as decision maker decide what we will call into our provisional reality, what we will experience today, let that knowing that This world of perception cannot change our reality. Be your reality. And with that, all fear dissipates. For fear is false evidence appearing real, and nothing in time and space can change your divine birthright. With that knowing, let's reconnect to the body. Energy in. I reconnect to the game token we call the body. The love of God in. I animate the game token so that it can hold a space so I can demonstrate what love would have me do. I accept the love of God and I make a decision to demonstrate that love of God. I accept the love of God. I extend the love of God. I accept the love of God. I am the love of God. My world is a reflection of me. What, as a decision maker, will you decide today? Will you light your world with the truth that you are only love? Or will you try to spread the illusion of fear that you are something you are not and try and make that real? To do so is to play a game that cannot change the truth. Today, make a decision to hone your skill and demonstrate love in form. And with that decision, salvation can become your reality. It does not have to be postponed for some future fantasy land. You are God's treasure. And take a deep breath. And as you do that, ground yourself in this time-space continuum with the realization that salvation is one decision away. Truth just is. And I make that decision for the truth today. Create a great day for yourself and your world. Namaste. The God in me recognizes the God in you. And so it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. That was wonderful. Appreciate that. All right, we're up to our discussion time. Thank you guys for joining us. It's almost 8 o'clock on the East Coast, and we start at about 6:30 reading A Course in Miracles, and reading out of a couple of different Course in Miracles books. Dad's got the purple one next to him, and I've got Tom's reference book, which is Understanding A Course in Miracles Workbook Lessons. And we read through those, and we talk about it. I'm not sure who else is up here who's interested in jumping in, but if you've got something that you want to share, want to ask about, you are welcome to. And then we'll go and have a wonderful day together.
I don't think anyone would just off the cuff make a statement like, if you said to them, you want to know the truth about this? And they probably wouldn't say, no, don't bother me. We all think we want to know the truth. We say we want to know the truth. We certainly see enough movies where that is anything but the truth. What goes on? It's there to excite, titillate, whatever it takes to get you to pay for the box office to go see the movie, because it gives you something other than the truth. Some people will think that the truth is hard to find, and for them it is, because that's the statement they make. That's what they believe. As we read in the beginning of this, what we believe generally determines what we think is true. What does that say about politics? I'm not even going to try and answer that one here. Everybody is free to believe what they want to believe. And if they get tired of believing something that doesn't have the kind of results that they want, the only thing they need to know is that they can change their beliefs and move towards a true version for themselves. In a sense, this is a very simple lesson. Only the truth is true. How obvious is that? And yet, there's many shades of gray, and we don't live, for the most part, in a world that only the truth is true. We are bombarded with so many different versions of what the truth really is. And we can spend a lifetime looking for the true truth. We spend several. In fact, we have, haven't we? So this is a simple lesson, but it's very deep, because it's deep from the beginning to the end of the word truth. It's all or nothing. And if we move in the direction of only the truth, we get there. If we get there at least 80%, we're in good shape. So I'd like to invite other people to speak about this. This is something that has so many variations. I'm sure everybody has
Sure
something that
can.
maybe they can contribute. Go for it, Sean.
I think just kind of putting the lesson together about truth is that, it's our point of view, and, that distinguishes truth from falsehood. And that point of view, I think, was touched on at the beginning of the lesson, which is the egoic self with the lowercase s, typically finds what it thinks is true in its moment, not necessarily what is true. It's true from a certain point in perspective, the egoic perspective. It could be, convincing yourself that, this is true, so it must be true, as opposed to, taking the egoic self out of, what's going on, and truly be an observer of the truth, taking myself out of play. um, I find that there's a lot more truth that I can see when, I'm not looking at it with my ego. And that, the more I see truth from the perspective of non-egoic self, the more, I can see people, and even have more compassion for people, because part of the egoic quote unquote truth is, the earner part that Tom keeps referring to. And, it's not the right perspective. In order for us to see truth, in my experience, I have to be able to call my own BS. And, that's when I get insecure. I get very fearful, and I go down a path of fear. And that perspective is the small self. It's still the egoic self. So I'm going to look at things that would attack or threaten my ego. So out of the gate, I'm already thinking me, and my perspective, not the God perspective. And it's a very important distinction in between the two. And I tend to find a lot of truth that way. Thank you.
I think the illusions built by the ego to protect itself can be so powerful. So for me, I faced a lot of rejection, bullying, and abuse, especially when I was young. And the only thing I knew was the illusion of success. And so I sought the standard markers of success, so high achievement, status, wealth, prestige, and held on to these accomplishments as if they were real, when in fact they were projections of my wounded ego and me trying to soothe myself by proving myself, so to speak. And it wasn't until I lost all of these attachments that I realized how much pain I'd been suppressing to hold on to those illusions. So to surface all of this pain was an act of healing. And having healed myself, I can connect with my authenticity and have the courage to see the truth for what it is. So I can no longer hold on to the superficial aesthetic of accomplishment. Instead, I now focused on things that I find truly rewarding, and a true effort to become everything that I can be. So rather than trying to prove myself, I'm now trying to become myself, having healed the pain that was at the core of my wounded ego.
Thank you for that.
reference, realizing that we're a spirit, a spiritual being, part of that oneness, and that we're God's beloved child. So that's one of the first things I always say or realize is that I'm God's beloved child. I'm his treasure. And therefore, I don't go around with fear. I'm not in fear because I realize that nothing in this world can rob me of my own inner peace, because the power of decision is my own. And so it's a total frame of reference. And what happens, politics or this world, when you realize that this world has no ability to change the truth of what you are, all fear dissipates, because with or without a body, know that I still exist, you still exist, and that there's nothing that can change that truth, what you really are. You're perfect, whole, and complete. Thank you.
He's right. Hey there, Lee Murphy. Come on up, sir. There we go. Hi, Lee. How are you?
Hey Lee, what's up?
Another great.
I just wanted to say thank you to Tom. Really, it's been I'm just getting introduced to the Course in Miracles. I really jive with it, and some of the things really hit home with me today in this moment. So yeah, I really, really appreciate it, and just wanted to express my gratitude. Thank you.
I had those same thoughts too, Lee. That's why I started reading his book. All right. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful day. If anybody else has anything they want to share, you're welcome to. But it sounds like we may have gone through here what we're came to do. So I'll shut it down in just a little bit. But thank you guys for coming. We'll be here tomorrow. And go ahead.
I do have one thought I'd like to throw out. In today's world, more than ever, we have the embodiment of one of the things that made America unique early on, and that is that we're a melting pot. And it was very, very obvious to me growing up in New York that we have many different, quote, nationalities coming together, which also means different points of view of how to live and how to treat other people and how to be with other people. And there are commonalities between all people, and those would probably bring us to the true truth of life and everything. But it also now, more than ever, as time goes on, introduces us to other points of view to at least consider about how we are living our life, who we are including with us on our life's journeys. More and more people are duo nationalists. They so many people now have at least parents who maybe come from different countries, come from different places, as opposed to back 60, 70, 80 years, it was much more rare for there to even be marriages of people not from the same country, not from the same religious background. So many of those things have just been shattered. And in one way, the word inclusiveness has become to me, one of the most important um, guides and purposes to live by, because even more than nationalities, more than religions, um, people just have many past beliefs that they bring with them. And so we have a plethora, an enormous melting pot of differences. And does that mean that no one can communicate with each other? I think it means just the opposite. I think that in order to find the truth, we can put aside a lot of the things that appear to be differences. And that's in the same nature as today's lesson, which is to find out what are those things that don't change. We can come from any place. We can go practically to any place, including the moon. But what is it that we really are? And it's the things that that's what we've been exploring in our lessons each day. And the idea of inclusiveness is an incredible concept. I was talking with a person that I'm involved with in business, and there's a group of 5 people that we've been putting together. And one person said, I cannot be included in this group if, and then he laid out certain parameters. That was yesterday. And another person brought up the idea of inclusiveness. It's something that is spiritually bound in our DNA, that there's people with all kinds of differences, but we have to learn to live together. John Lennon, to me, his greatest song was Imagine if there weren't any countries and there weren't any religions and the things that tend to split us apart. And so much of that is stuff that is not important to our very existence. But it's funny, when you look at most religions, they all have some idea of a one God at the top of the chain, let's say. And we're all children of God. So we unite on that, we include that, and we're part of that one. Then comes the real challenge. What do we let go of that doesn't fit into that? Is it what we look like? No, because what we look like has all to do with our physicality rather than our spirituality. These are just some thoughts that I've been thinking a lot about inclusiveness in so many different areas, and it's amazing how we have learned to. Society has taught us, TVs have taught us to learn to include other people in our quote groups, because we can learn things from people with other backgrounds. If we're just relearning the same thing that a community that 8 generations back has always stayed, the people have stayed there and did what they did, and they haven't learned very much, perhaps. If they've learned a lot about God, then maybe they have learned a lot. Anyway, I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts along these lines, but that only the truth is true, and what about the rest of it? Maybe you have some experiences of having let some of the extra fringe differences go in order to be able to feel comfortable in your skin and in your spirituality. So I'll put that question out, see if you have any thoughts along those lines.
I enjoyed a lot of rejection in an elitist environment at one of the top corporate law firms in the world. So having worked really hard to get myself in those doors, I was faced with so much obnoxiousness, and it just made me sick that people who were supposedly the best and brightest had this sense of entitlement when it comes to how they treat people who are not of their ethnicity. So, as much as they promote themselves as a diverse and inclusive workplace, I endured racism. I also, had people bully me because I wasn't from a wealthy background. I was called stupid and unsophisticated, and it was just the most disgusting experience of my life. And I
That's
think
heartbreaking.
it reflects the core of corruption that surrounds our institutions, because if you fill those institutions with people like that, you're not going to get a vibrant, modern, representative workforce. You're going to get much of the same, perpetuating a lot of the old dogmas.
Absolutely agree. So sorry that happened to you. I know it's rampant. I know it's tough. I try and do my part, and I still see the problems. And I guess we didn't really get into this yesterday, but my sister Linda, she has the same ethnicity you do. Being a white guy, I know
Nope.
I don't get it. Yeah? No? Am I
Ask
off by
Linda.
a couple of countries? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Linda is an Australian Chinese extract. And
Thank
it's
you.
fascinating to me. I asked her about it just a little while ago in
I
back
should have
channel.
asked.
Back to you. No, that's all. I just wanted to point that part out. Please continue.
That's okay. There's been a long history in our country of racism, and I'm ready for it to be in our past. I don't know what it's going to take for it to get there and how we get past it, but I'm certainly sorry for it, and I wish it could go away. Today, I know in my heart I can focus on the answers that I get out of this book, and it helps me get a little bit closer to the truth. So I've got that a little bit.
It is fascinating. Linda, you're kind of new to this room, so you may not know that the Linda that Lee is referring to is my Vietnamese daughter, who I met a year ago after 50 years of not even knowing if the child was going to be a boy or a girl when I left Vietnam. And getting to know her has been one of the greatest joys of my life, one of the incredible wonders of my life. Lee has a sister that he always wanted. Linda has a brother she always wanted. They get along great together. She's about to marry Fung because she got her engagement ring 2 days ago. And we all got a picture of her left hand with the nice diamond. She had said to Fung, who is also an Amerasian, I want a big diamond. They had been courting each other for some time, but she had her limits. She had her basic things that she wanted. And I think that's going to be a terrific marriage. I have a rainbow family more than ever. And it makes me it brings great excitement to me to include different ethnicities and different backgrounds. I have an older cousin who married a black man before I married my wife. And in my case, I was born and raised Jewish. She was born and raised Methodist. That was enough of a start of difficulties. that uh, at that point, 67, well, no, 50 years ago, could have created a schism in our family. It didn't in my personal life because that cousin lives here in Raleigh, and we're very close to her. She's very sweet and loving and very special. She's in her 80s, and I always am interested when there is quote intermarriage, because I can recall how difficult it was for my father to accept it. Um, the play and the movie Fiddler on the Roof is a good example of how difficult it can be for people who are brought up to think only in one way, which means that they don't believe another way would be appropriate. And I think that it hurts them because they're not getting a full balance. But that's my particular belief. I have always welcomed inclusiveness, and I think it's a wonderful thing. So, does anyone else have any thoughts along these lines? Linda, it does sound like you went through a lot of hell with that legal firm that you were with. I'm assuming you're no longer with them.
Yeah, no, I happily left that firm, but it was horrible.
Anyone else want to share? Or invite you to come up, speak up. George, haven't heard from you in a while.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, George.
I sit here waiting for the Holy Spirit or Bob to ask me to talk. And lately, it seems the Holy
What's the
Spirit has.
difference?
And that's true. There is no difference. And but it is interesting sitting here in patience, just waiting and waiting for the nudge. And Bob, thank you for giving me the nudge every once in a while.
Anytime.
I guess in the light of what Linda was saying, as a white male, um, you know, I certainly have never felt privileged. And I went to work for Wall Street and found myself in a similar environment that Linda was talking about. Basically, what can you do for me? And if you can't do anything for me, you're worthless. And so it's just beyond ethnicity, if you will. It's just an attitude of ego, and you're only worth what you could give me. You're only worth where you can get me. You're only worth what you can make, if you can make me money. And I just found that environment so sad. So I can relate to what Linda's saying, is the sadness of, oh my God, I'm only worth to this person what I can bring to this person. They don't see me. And I was a mess on Wall Street, and I walked around with a rosary in my pocket, and I basically did the rosary all day long and was miserable. So I could relate, and it's just, the ego is just not a fun place to live. And I guess that's what I was supposed to say, Bob. So thanks for stirring that up.
Well, if you keep coming back, I'm going to keep nudging you because it's always a pleasure to hear your thoughts. George, for those of you who don't know, helped us start doing this about a year ago. Actually, our first official broadcast was July forth in this clubhouse room. And George has been the one that's tied us also firmly to Facebook. And as you all know, Lee takes the recording of this and puts it on our Facebook page. And I think that's great because I believe this is Sermon on the Mount Part 2. I think that's what the Course in Miracles is about. And I think that people need to at least have it available. And that's what our job is. If they read it, if they are interested, they can join us any day. We like being here every day because Lee and I learned 6 years ago, almost, it'll be in August, it'll be 6 years, that if we start our day off talking about Course in Miracles with at least one other person, or maybe just listening in some cases, then we have the benefit of a joint decision that started, 55, 56 years ago, that there must be a better way to live this life. And it's definitely, in my opinion, one of inclusion, to bring in other points of view, to enable us to smash the idols that keep us idle, IDLE, that keep us from growing and having so much more to our life than what we ever thought possible. Here I am at 77, and this morning's conference that I was in before here, that I referred to earlier, was with my partner, a black man who has a photographic memory. And I've never worked with someone with a memory like that, although I was always told that my father had a photographic memory, and he could talk about anything from Shakespeare to Carl Jung, or anywhere in the Bible, Old or New Testament, you name it, he could quote it, and that was interesting. But in this morning's conversation, I was listening to a guy who could quote congressmen and senators and their name clearly. And I would say he probably went through about 30 of them, explaining what each one thought and why it's relevant to what we're about to do, which is to bring housing to Liberia and Sierra Leone. Because of his ability to see the bigger picture and to clarify it, he can put us in a position to bring in congressmen, senators in America to help out with what's going on in Liberia. This is so far beyond anything that I ever thought I would be involved in, and yet it's a thrill to work with him. And if I were a racist, I'd be in deep shit, frankly, because it just wouldn't work very well if I were getting up in front of a lot of black people and talking to them. They wouldn't believe me, and it still remains to be seen. But I learn things one day at a time, and I embrace this program, because I may have meetings before it and meetings during the day after it, but it's become a basic to my life because it's kind of like starting the day off right, and it works that way. So that's all I have to allow for now, I think. And if anybody else wants to join in before we finish up, please do.